The morning sunlight, a familiar and almost sacred presence, streamed through the expansive bay windows of my parents' formal dining room. It caught, as it always did, on the facets of crystal glasses arranged on the polished mahogany table, scattering tiny rainbows and brilliant pinpricks of light across the pristine white tablecloth. Each glint felt like a whispered echo of countless Sundays past, a silent testament to an unbroken lineage of family gatherings. The familiar, almost suffocating, weight of tradition settled over me, a sensation I'd known since childhood, simultaneously comforting and constricting. I adjusted the rich burgundy linen napkin on my lap, its crisp fold a small act of defiance against the deeper, unspoken expectations, and breathed in the deeply comforting, yet slightly cloying, aroma of Mom's slow-cooked pot roast. The scent, thick with herbs and savory meat, conjured an immediate sense of home, of childhood, and of the intricate, often unspoken, rules that governed this space. My father, Charles, stood, as was his custom, at the head of the gleaming mahogany table, his silver carving knife glinting under the sunlight. He carved the roast with a practiced precision honed over decades of Sunday dinners, his movements efficient and unhurried. Each succulent slice of beef fell perfectly onto the delicate floral pattern of the Wedgwood china plates, a set he reserved exclusively for these formal, weekly gatherings. "Just a small piece for me, Dad," I requested, my voice soft but firm, a futile attempt to assert even this minor autonomy. I watched, a quiet frustration simmering beneath my calm exterior, as he completely ignored my subtle plea, instead placing a truly generous, disproportionate portion onto my plate, far more than I had intended. "You're too thin, Gabrielle," he declared, his voice carrying the familiar, paternalistic tone of unquestionable authority, without even bothering to lift his gaze from the task at hand. "Always have been." I braced myself, a retort forming on my tongue, a sharp reminder that at 38 years old, I was perfectly capable of determining my own caloric intake and portion sizes. But before the words could escape, before I could engage in the predictable, circular debate, the heavy oak front door of the house burst open with an unexpected, jarring force. The carefully constructed tableau of peaceful, dignified Sunday tradition shattered instantly, dissolving into a cacophony of sound and motion. My younger sister, Vanessa, swept into the dining room, a whirlwind of vibrant energy and barely contained excitement, her husband Mark following reluctantly in her wake, trailed by their 3 boisterous children. In a matter of seconds, the once serene room was obliterated by noise, school backpacks thudding carelessly to the polished hardwood floor, children immediately arguing over who got which seat, Mark's heavy, almost apologetic footsteps echoing loudly as he navigated the narrow space. "Sorry we're late," Vanessa announced, her voice bright and unapologetic, laced with an unusual, almost giddy excitement that instantly put me on edge, tightening a knot of apprehension in my stomach. There wasn't a hint of actual remorse in her tone, just a casual dismissal. Traffic was absolutely dreadful by the outlet mall. Her explanation, delivered with a casual shrug, sent a flicker of irritation through me. "You went shopping before Sunday dinner?" I asked, my question barely audible, immediately drowned out by Mom's effusive, overly enthusiastic greetings of her grandchildren. Dad, however, caught Vanessa's eye across the bustling room, offering a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. It was a silent, complicit exchange, a shared understanding that tightened something cold and hard in my chest. I recognized that look, the conspiratorial glance they'd exchanged since we were children, a silent signal that almost invariably preceded my discovery that I was the only one not included, not informed, not privy to some impending family plan. "Well, we're all here now," Mom interjected, her voice brisk and cheerful, patting the table as if to physically gather us all into the fold. "Charles, please finish serving so we can eat while it's hot." We settled into the familiar, well-worn rhythm of passing heavy serving dishes, the clatter of silverware against china, and the obligatory small talk. Mom, ever the attentive parent, inquired politely about my latest architectural project, while Dad, in turn, quizzed Mark about the vagaries of the stock market. The children, predictably, intermittently whined about the presence of unwelcome vegetables on their plates, their protests a steady background hum. So, Vanessa began abruptly, her voice suddenly rising above the general dining room chatter, cutting through the comfortable hum of conversation with an almost surgical precision. Her eyes, still bright with that unnerving excitement, met mine across the table. "We're moving into your lake house next week. We've got some pretty serious foundation issues with our place, you see." My fork, halfway to my mouth with a bite of Mom's pot roast, froze mid-air, suspended in a moment of stunned disbelief. "What?" I managed to articulate, the single word sharp with incredulity, my voice cracking slightly. "It's just sitting empty anyway, Gabrielle," Dad interjected smoothly, his tone deliberately casual, almost dismissive, yet his eyes, I noticed, were unusually watchful, darting between Vanessa and me. "I get the blue bedroom," Vanessa's oldest son announced, his voice shrill with excitement, bouncing exuberantly in his chair, already claiming his prize. "No fair." "Mom said I could have that one," his sister protested, her voice rising in immediate, indignant rivalry. Their childish argument, however, faded into an indistinct background noise as a cold, unsettling realization washed over me, chilling me to the bone. The children had already picked out their bedrooms. This wasn't a spontaneous announcement, it was a carefully orchestrated maneuver. This was planned, discussed, and decided definitively and unilaterally long before I had ever sat down at this table, before I had even been asked. "Your lake house has plenty of room, dear," Mom added, her tone solicitous but firm, as if this simple statement settled every possible objection. "And they won't be there forever, you know." 6 years. 6 painstaking years I had poured into restoring that lakeside property, transforming it from a neglected shell into a sanctuary. $420,000 to purchase it, a significant chunk of my life savings, plus another $95,000 invested in critical, non-negotiable repairs. I had single-handedly managed the devastating flood damage 3 years ago, a catastrophic event that had nearly broken me, while they, my dear family, were all cruising the sun-drenched Caribbean. I had spent weeks, back-breaking weeks, salvaging ruined hardwood floors, painstakingly replacing waterlogged drywall, navigating insurance claims, and coordinating contractors. That house was more than just property to me, it was the sacred space where I had rebuilt myself, piece by agonizing piece, after the emotional wreckage of my divorce. It was where I had learned, for the first time in years, to fall asleep without checking the locks 3 times, where the suffocating anxiety had finally begun to recede, and where I had finally, truly, started breathing again. It was my hard-won peace. "Family needs to help family," Vanessa declared, her voice now taking on the practiced, slightly condescending cadence of a speech she had clearly rehearsed, her gaze unwavering as she delivered her carefully constructed lines. "We'd absolutely do the same for you, Gabrielle, you know that." The blatant hypocrisy of her words burned. It would only be for 7 months, really, until the foundation work on their place is complete," Dad quickly interjected, attempting to soften the blow, to lend an air of temporary necessity to the demand. Mark, meanwhile, kept his eyes resolutely fixed on his plate, avoiding all eye contact, his discomfort a palpable presence, his silence speaking volumes about his reluctant involvement in this audacious plan. With a quiet, deliberate gesture that felt more significant than any spoken word, I set my burgundy linen napkin down beside my plate, its soft thud drawing the attention of everyone at the table. Something profound shifted inside me then, a clarity, sharp and unexpected, that felt both surprising in its suddenness and long overdue in its arrival. "Gabrielle, you're always so particular about your things," Mom said, dismissing my unspoken objection, my rising anger, with a wave of her hand, as if my desire for personal space and respect for property were merely an annoying personality quirk. "This is just what families do, Gabrielle," Dad added, his tone seamlessly sliding into the condescending register he reserved exclusively for moments when he believed someone, usually me, was being utterly unreasonable, irrational, or uncooperative. "We help each other. It's simply how it is." Vanessa's lips curled into a familiar, entitled smile, a smirk that broadened with each passing second as she watched me, clearly sensing another effortless victory in our lifelong, predictable pattern. She had always taken, without question or hesitation. I had always, inexplicably, given. And our parents, with their intricate web of expectations and passive facilitation, had always ensured that the imbalance continued. Not this time. A quiet resolve settled over me, firm and unyielding. I calmly reached for my handbag, which hung on the back of the chair beside me, extracted a crisp manila folder, and placed it deliberately on the polished mahogany tabletop. "The contractors," I stated, my voice surprisingly steady, even to my own ears, "start Monday next week. Bright and early." With a measured movement, I opened the folder, revealing a stack of renovation contracts, city permits, and architectural drawings, each page bearing my precise signature and official dates from 3 months prior. "It's a complete, 9-month renovation," I continued, meeting their stunned gazes, "everything. Down to the studs." A profound silence descended over the table, thick and sudden, like a physical weight. Dad's carving knife, poised over the roast, froze in midair. Mom's water glass remained suspended, halfway to her trembling lips. Vanessa's triumphant, entitled smile slowly, agonizingly, collapsed, her features twisting in confusion and dawning horror. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water, noting with a detached sense of surprise the complete calm in my hand, the lack of tremor. As I raised the crystal glass, the sunlight streaming through the bay windows caught its facets, throwing tiny, sharp-edged rainbows across the tablecloth, beautiful, fleeting prisms of light that, in their stunned shock, no one else seemed to notice. The silence choked the formal dining room, suddenly heavy and oppressive. I watched, with a quiet, almost detached fascination, as realization bloomed across my family's stunned faces, one by one. The open manila folder, with its stark, undeniable evidence of my meticulously laid plans, sat between us like a loaded gun, its pages bristling with legal and contractual authority. Dad's carving knife remained suspended, frozen above the perfectly cooked roast, abandoned mid-task. Mom's water glass, now an extension of her disbelief, was still arrested halfway to her lips. For once, Vanessa's practiced, triumphant smile had not merely faltered, it had completely shattered. "You can't be serious," Vanessa finally managed, her voice climbing an octave, shrill with disbelief and the first tremor of genuine panic. "We've already given notice at our apartment. Where are we supposed to go?" I took another slow, deliberate sip of water, using the moment not just to moisten my dry throat, but to mentally catalogue the long, infuriating history of Vanessa's unwavering entitlement, a highlight reel of past transgressions flashing through my mind. The time she had borrowed my newly purchased car for a weekend trip that had inexplicably stretched into 2 months, only to return it with a cracked windshield that, she insisted, was already like that. The small loan of $3,000 that had somehow, miraculously, ballooned to a staggering $18,000, still unpaid 6 agonizing years later. The discovery of the spare key to my apartment that she had made without my knowledge or permission, an unsettling revelation that had come to light when I found her casually using my shower one afternoon, completely uninvited. "You'll have to find somewhere else," I stated, my voice steadier, stronger than I had ever anticipated it could be. "The contractors, as I said, start Monday." "Gabrielle." Dad set down his carving knife with a definitive clatter, abandoning all pretense of continuing dinner. His corporate negotiator voice, the smooth, authoritative tone he reserved exclusively for recalcitrant clients and difficult business adversaries, slid seamlessly into place. "Be reasonable about this. Your sister has 3 children, Gabrielle, and serious foundation issues," Mom added, nodding vigorously, her eyes wide with a practiced distress. "You can't possibly expect them to live in an unsafe house." "I don't," I replied, my gaze unwavering as I met my mother's pleading eyes. "I expect them to find their own housing solution that doesn't involve unilaterally taking mine." Vanessa's eyes narrowed, sharp and calculating, as she exchanged a quick, silent glance with Dad. I recognized their familiar, wordless communication, the same subtle look they had shared when I was 16 and discovered, to my utter devastation, that they had given away my college savings to fund Vanessa's lavish wedding. The coordinated pressure campaign, the tag team emotional manipulation, was so incredibly familiar, I felt as though I could script its every predictable beat. But we've already started packing. Vanessa's voice shifted, exactly on cue, from demanding to a tearful, desperate plea, her lower lip trembling. The moving truck is scheduled for Monday morning. This will simply break your father's heart, Mom whispered theatrically, reaching across the table to clasp Dad's hand in a display of dramatic solidarity. My phone vibrated softly against my thigh, a discreet buzz on my lap. It was a text from Miguel, my general contractor. All materials delivered. We're ready for Monday morning, 7 a.m. Sharp. A second notification immediately followed, smart lock system active. A wave of unexpected warmth unfurled in my chest, not anger, not anxiety, but a profound, rock-solid sense of confidence. While they were busy planning their ambush, I had been diligently preparing mine. The security company had completed the installation of the comprehensive system just last week. The renovation permits were all filed, approved, and officially stamped. I had done everything, meticulously, by the book. What about storage for our furniture? Mark finally spoke for the first time, his voice barely above a whisper, still studying his plate, avoiding the escalating tension. We could at least store things in the garage temporarily, couldn't we? The garage is being converted to a home gym, I stated, the words clipped and final. Everything's coming down to the studs, as I mentioned. You'll regret putting a stupid renovation before family, Gabrielle. Vanessa hissed, her eyes welling with convenient, instant tears, a performance I'd seen countless times before, at family holidays, at birthdays, any time she didn't immediately get her way, the tears appearing and vanishing with suspicious, theatrical precision. Dad leaned forward, his voice lowered, imbued with a quiet menace that was far more chilling than any shout. Gabrielle, this situation, this stubbornness, could impact certain decisions about the future. The inheritance threat. Right on schedule. What about the children? Mom's voice rose, laced with a practiced distress that once would have instantly melted my resolve. They'll be homeless. I folded the burgundy linen napkin on my lap with meticulous precision, each crease deliberate, each movement a conscious act of reclaiming control. The immense weight of their expectations, their lifetime of demands disguised as unconditional family obligation, pressed heavily against my shoulders. But for the first time, it no longer crushed me. Poor planning on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on mine, I said, meeting Dad's gaze directly, my voice clear and unwavering. Recognition flashed across his face, his own words, his decades-old business mantra, the harsh, unsentimental truth he had repeated countless times to clients who had failed to prepare properly, now turned back on him, delivered with an almost surgical precision. I stood up, collecting my purse and the manila folder. I've respected my contractual obligations, I declared, my voice resonating with newfound authority. You should, in turn, respect my boundaries. Sit down, Gabrielle, Dad's voice hardened, no longer a plea or a threat, but a command. We're not finished discussing this. I am. Vanessa's oldest son looked up from his half-eaten plate, his small face bewildered by the sudden, intense tension. But I already told all my friends about my new Lakehouse bedroom. It's not your bedroom, I said gently, my voice softening for the boy, and it's not your Lakehouse. I turned and walked toward the dining room door, my footsteps echoing with a surprising finality on the polished hardwood. Behind me, the entire family scrambled to their feet, a frantic chorus of protests, demands, and increasingly desperate pleas. I didn't turn around. The front door closed behind me with a soft, almost imperceptible click, a sound that felt more decisive, more conclusive, than any slam could ever have been. Outside, the crisp autumn air rushed into my lungs, cold and invigorating, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. I walked steadily to my car, ignoring the immediate twitch of the dining room curtain as Mom, predictably, watched me leave. My phone lit up with Dad's number before I had even backed out of the driveway, the screen a rapidly accumulating tally of missed calls. 12 by the time I reached the highway. Only when I was truly alone on the interstate, with a solid 20 miles separating me from that house and its suffocating expectations, did my hands finally begin to shake against the steering wheel. The adrenaline crash hit hard and fast, trembling fingers, a sudden, desperate shallowing of breath, a wave of post-confrontation exhaustion. But beneath the raw physical reaction, my newfound resolve, born of years of quiet suffering and this one decisive stand, remained steady, unyielding. I pulled into a dimly lit rest stop, needing a moment to compose myself, and dialed Miguel's number. "Miguel," I began, my voice still slightly breathless, "make sure the security system is fully operational by tomorrow morning, absolutely no exceptions." I paused, then added, "And could you please move the dumpsters directly in front of the garage doors? I'm concerned about unauthorized access." "Already planned on it, Miss Morgan," he replied, and I could hear the faint smile in his voice, a hint of knowing amusement. "After what happened with the flood damage repairs, I figured your family might try something." My grip on the phone tightened. He remembered. Someone, outside of me, remembered how I had handled the emergency repairs alone, how I had navigated the overwhelming chaos 3 years ago when the family was far too busy cruising the Caribbean to offer even a shred of help. "The locks are changed," Miguel continued, his voice reassuringly professional. "And we've got cameras at all entry points, discreet but effective." The persistent shaking in my hands slowly, imperceptibly, subsided. I wasn't alone in this, not truly. "Thank you, Miguel," I said, a genuine gratitude welling in my chest. "I'll see you Monday morning." As I ended the call, a new text from Vanessa appeared on my screen. "Dad's furious. Fix this now." I switched my phone to silent and placed it deliberately on the passenger seat, beyond my immediate reach. The evening sky deepened to a magnificent indigo above the sweeping expanse of the highway as I pulled back onto the road, heading home. Not to the lake house that was becoming something entirely different now, something truly and utterly mine. But to the quiet apartment where I had finally learned to sleep through the night without checking the locks 3 times, where my anxieties had slowly begun to recede. Tomorrow, I knew with absolute certainty, they would escalate. The pressure would intensify. But for the very first time in our long, shared history, I was prepared. Monday morning of the next week arrived with the deep, throaty rumble of a heavy engine that most certainly did not belong on my quiet, tree-lined street. I paused at my kitchen window, coffee mug suspended halfway to my lips, watching with a grim, knowing satisfaction as a large moving truck, its burgundy logo precisely matching the color of Vanessa's favorite lipstick from that dreadful Sunday dinner, lumbered slowly up my lakeside property's narrow, winding gravel drive. My phone vibrated persistently against the cool granite counter. It was the 5th call from Dad since dawn. I silenced it without a glance, then gathered the manila folder of permits, the very same one I had displayed for the family at that fraught Sunday dinner. The weight of it in my hands felt different now, no longer mere paper, but substantial and comforting, like a shield, like armor. By the time I arrived at the lake house, Ray, my trusted general contractor, and his efficient construction crew had already established a clear perimeter of bright orange safety cones. Sturdy sawhorses effectively blocked the driveway entrance, forcing the behemoth moving truck to idle awkwardly at the very edge of the main road. I parked my car deliberately behind Ray's pickup truck and stepped out into the crisp, invigorating autumn air, which now carried the distinct, promising scent of pine, fresh sawdust, and chainsaw exhaust. "Miss Morgan." Ray, his weathered face etched with years of experience, nodded respectfully, clipboard firmly in hand, flanked by 6 uniformed workers in hard hats. "We've got the demolition permits posted as required, right on the front gate. Interior stripping begins in exactly 30 minutes. "Thank you, Ray." I scanned the property, my gaze falling on the conspicuously parked moving truck. "I see we have some unexpected visitors." Ray's professional demeanor remained perfectly unruffled. They arrived about 10 minutes ago. Claimed they had your explicit permission to move in today. As if on cue, the driver's door of the moving truck swung open. Vanessa emerged, designer sunglasses pushed dramatically atop her head, her face flushed with a color that deepened considerably the moment her eyes met mine across the expanse of the lawn. "What the hell is going on here, Gabrielle?" She stalked toward me, her voice sharp with indignation, pointing an accusing finger at the imposing array of construction equipment. "These men won't let our movers through." I met her halfway, maintaining a deliberate distance between us, ensuring that her voice had to carry across the yard, her performance now publicly broadcast. The security guard I had hired, a quietly imposing figure, stood attentively near Ray, his mere presence a calm, reassuring anchor amidst the escalating drama. "As I clearly explained to you on Sunday last week, Vanessa," I stated, my voice even, unwavering, "the renovation begins today. This property isn't habitable during construction." I held up the folder, briefly displaying the official permits. "You can't be serious." Vanessa's voice rose, shrill and indignant, drawing curious stares from the construction workers, who paused their preparations to watch. "We've already given notice at our place. Where are we supposed to go?" I calmly withdrew a simple white envelope from my bag. "This might help," I offered. Inside was a 6-month contract for a climate-controlled storage unit, already paid in full. "Fine." She stared at the envelope, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes, but she made no move to take it. "Storage? We need somewhere to live, Gabrielle, not somewhere to store our stuff. Your housing isn't my responsibility, Vanessa." The words, once so difficult to utter, now came easier than I ever could have expected, imbued with a quiet power. "Your foundation issues didn't materialize overnight. You've had ample time to make alternative arrangements." Her eyes narrowed, sharp and calculating, searching my face for any hint of weakness, any crack in my resolve. Finding none, she spun on her heel and strode purposefully toward the front door of the Lakehouse. "I still have a key," she called over her shoulder, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. "We'll just work around your little project, Gabrielle." "That won't work," I replied, following her at a measured, unhurried pace. Vanessa jammed her key into the lock, twisting it forcefully. Nothing happened. She tried again, exerting more pressure, a growing frustration evident in her movements. "Welcome to Secure Home Systems," announced a calm, robotic female voice from the small speaker discreetly mounted beside the door. "Unauthorized entry attempt detected at main entrance, alerting property owner and security service." My phone, in my pocket, chimed softly with the alert notification. Vanessa whirled to face me, her face a mask of disbelief. "You changed the locks last week," she demanded, her voice a raw mixture of shock and fury. I simply nodded, then gestured subtly toward the security cameras mounted discreetly at the roofline, their lenses silently recording everything. "The police have been notified about potential trespassing," I explained, my voice devoid of emotion. "It's standard security protocol for an active construction site." Something profound broke in her expression, the polished veneer of entitlement finally cracking to reveal a raw, ugly anger beneath. "You can't do this to us. We're family," she shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch that was almost painful. "Family respects boundaries, Vanessa," I said, surprised yet again by the unwavering steadiness in my voice. My phone rang. It was the security company, right on schedule. I answered briefly, confirming that the alert had been triggered by my sister, not an actual intruder. When I hung up, Vanessa had retreated to the moving truck, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Through the windshield, I could see her gesturing wildly to Mark, who sat slumped in the passenger seat, his head in his hands. Ray approached, his hard hat now in his hand. "We're ready to begin whenever you are, Miss Morgan." "Let's proceed, Ray." I signed his clipboard, my signature firm and confident. "The interior timeline is tight. I'd like the master bedroom suite completely demolished by Thursday. We'll make it happen, Miss Morgan. He hesitated for a moment, a furrow in his brow. Your sister seems quite determined. Should we expect interference? Before I could answer, the moving truck engine roared to life, a sudden, unexpected burst of sound. Instead of turning around and leaving, however, it lurched forward, bypassing the orange sawhorses by deliberately veering onto the lawn. It stopped a mere 20 feet from us, its heavy tires crushing the ornamental grasses I'd so carefully planted last spring. The movers, looking uncomfortable and uncertain, jumped out, lowering the ramp at Vanessa's sharp command, and began to unload furniture. Vanessa emerged from the truck's cab, a triumphant, almost defiant smile fixed on her face, a clear signal of her desperate attempt to regain control. Since you won't be reasonable, Gabrielle, she called across the lawn, her voice ringing with feigned authority, we'll just have to store things here temporarily. The yard will work perfectly fine until you come to your senses. The first piece, an ornate mahogany dresser that had once belonged to our grandmother, thudded heavily onto my freshly manicured lawn, a perverse act of desecration. Mark, his face a picture of misery, followed silently behind the movers, compliant but clearly wretched. I didn't move a muscle. Instead, I calmly reached for my phone and dialed a number I had deliberately saved yesterday. Lakeside Auction House. Yes, this is Gabrielle Morgan. I maintained unwavering eye contact with Vanessa as I spoke into the phone, my voice clear and deliberate. Yes, please proceed with the pickup as discussed. And yes, donate all proceeds to the foster youth program. Vanessa froze mid-stride, her triumphant smile slowly dissolving, replaced by a look of profound confusion and dawning horror. They'll be here within the hour, I confirmed, ending the call, then met Vanessa's stunned gaze. What auction house? She demanded, her voice edged with genuine panic. The one I contacted yesterday evening, after dinner, I explained, gesturing toward the growing pile of furniture accumulating on my lawn. I anticipated this move, Vanessa. Ray cleared his throat. Miss Morgan, we really need to begin demolition. Should we work around the furniture situation? No need, Ray. I handed him the final authorization forms. Everything on the property not secured inside the storage sheds is being removed today. The rest of the day unfolded precisely according to my plan. Construction began in earnest, the sounds of hammers and saws filling the air, while the piles of Vanessa's furniture grew steadily on my lawn. Vanessa alternated wildly between indignant threats and theatrical tears. Eventually, Mark, looking utterly defeated, managed to convince her to leave, promising they would return tomorrow to fix this misunderstanding. 2 days later, on Wednesday morning, I received the call I had been expecting. I was standing in what was once the master bedroom, the space now utterly transformed, as workers removed the last of the drywall, revealing the raw, honest framework of bare studs beneath. You heartless bitch. Vanessa's voice exploded through my phone, shrill and venomous. The auction truck took everything. That was heirloom furniture, Gabrielle. I stepped outside to hear better, the construction noise a dull roar behind me. Then it should never have been dumped on property you don't own, Vanessa. Her scream resonated through the phone, a visceral cry of rage, but something profound had changed inside me. The profound calm I felt wasn't forced, wasn't a performance, it had become my natural state. The boundary I had so carefully, so painfully, established felt absolutely right, undeniably necessary. I've kept all the documentation, Vanessa, I informed her when her tirade finally subsided, replaced by a ragged, furious silence. Photos of furniture abandoned on private property. Security footage of attempted unauthorized entry. The official police report about the trespassing warnings. The silence on her end spoke volumes. I've also instructed the property management company about authorized visitors, I continued, pressing my advantage. You're welcome to schedule an appointment to see the renovation progress, with advanced notice, of course. Mom and Dad are coming to talk some sense into you, she finally spat, her voice brittle with impotent fury. I checked my watch, then glanced at the construction foreman, who gave me a confident thumbs up. Perfect timing, Vanessa. Let them see exactly what they can't take from me. As I hung up, the workers began dismantling what would have been Vanessa's claimed master suite, the room where she had envisioned her victory. The sledgehammer crashed through the remaining wall, a cathartic, resounding blow. Sunlight suddenly flooded the space through the newly exposed frame, brilliant and unfiltered. For the first time in years, I could breathe deeply here, truly deeply. The air smelled not of obligation and resentment, but of sawdust and exhilarating possibility. The security system chimed softly, alerting me to vehicles approaching the property. I stepped onto the newly installed porch, architectural building plans clutched firmly in my hand, watching as my parents' familiar sedan rolled to a stop beside the imposing construction equipment. The final, dramatic demolition of the master bedroom walls concluded with perfect, almost theatrical timing, the last sections crumbling with a satisfying crash. I stood there, framed in the brilliant sunlight streaming through the bare wooden beams, ready to greet them on my own terms, in my own space. I straightened my hard hat, adjusted the protective goggles, and a small, quiet smile played at the corners of my mouth. "Miss Morgan, where do you want the drywall stacked?" called Rico, the site foreman, his voice cutting through the sounds of construction. "Along the east wall, Rico," I answered, pointing toward the area where, for decades, my grandmother's antique sideboard had once stood. "Make sure it's covered if it looks like rain." Dad and Mom emerged from their car like cautious explorers stepping onto alien terrain, their usual confident stride replaced by a hesitant uncertainty. Dad's face visibly hardened as he took in the industrial landscape of construction equipment scattered across what was once a meticulously manicured lawn. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, a dramatic gesture, as her eyes rapidly scanned the property, her expression a mix of shock and dismay. "What have you done, Gabrielle?" Dad's voice, usually so commanding, struggled to carry across the yard, competing fiercely with the high-pitched scream of a circular saw ripping through lumber nearby. I walked toward them with measured, deliberate steps, my work boots crunching loudly on the loose gravel. "I told you, Dad. 9-month renovation, everything down to the studs." They followed me, their footsteps faltering noticeably at the threshold of what had once been the formal living room, now a cavernous space of exposed beams, a gutted fireplace, and rough subfloor where polished hardwood once gleamed with generations of family memories. "This is insanity," Mom whispered, her voice barely audible over the blare of the contractor's radio, which played a jaunty classic rock anthem. "You've completely destroyed it." "No, Mom," I corrected her gently, my voice firm. "I'm rebuilding it. My vision. My timeline." Dad surveyed the gutted space, his businessman's eyes, ever analytical, calculating the cost, the scale of the transformation, the sheer audacity of it all. "Gabrielle, this is excessive. Stop this now, and we can still make arrangements for Vanessa's family. We can find a compromise." I laughed then, a short, genuine burst of amusement, the sound echoing off the exposed studs and bare walls. "That's not happening, Dad." His face darkened instantly, a familiar storm cloud gathering in his eyes. "You've never understood family obligation, Gabrielle," he declared, his voice rising, regaining its customary authority. "I can cut you out of the will entirely, you know." The threat hung in the raw, exposed air between us, heavy and deliberate. 6 months ago, it would have wounded me deeply, sent me scrambling to appease him, to backpedal and capitulate. Now, I merely nodded, a calm, almost indifferent gesture. "You already did, Dad," I said calmly, meeting his stunned gaze directly. "When I refused to co-sign Mark's failed real estate deal last year." Mom gasped, a sharp, choked sound. Dad's face, suddenly, inexplicably, drained of all color, leaving him looking pale and utterly blindsided. "Vanessa mentioned it during one of her attempts to get money for their down payment," I explained, picking up a set of blueprints from a makeshift work table, displaying them with a casual expertise. She said you'd already rewritten the will to protect family assets. Her words, not mine. Mom's eyes filled with tears, the familiar, manipulative kind that, in another life, would have instantly unraveled my resolve. Gabrielle, please think of the children, she pleaded, her voice thick with manufactured distress. I am the mom, I replied, turning toward Rico, the foreman, with an air of professional purpose. How's the children's reading nook coming along? The built-ins are framed and looking great, Miss Morgan, he answered, nodding toward a far corner of the expansive space. Should look just like your designs. I watched my mother's confusion bloom slowly across her face, a genuine, unfeigned bewilderment. For the foster youth program, I explained softly, the same one that received the $12,000 from the furniture auction. Dad's eyes narrowed, shifting from shock to suspicion. Vanessa said, you sold family heirlooms. Furniture left on property that wasn't hers, I corrected him patiently, my voice unwavering. The auction house documented everything. It was a very public, transparent process, Dad. Mom clutched Dad's arm, her grip tight. Charles, she's made us look terrible. People are talking. I calmly pulled out my phone, opening social media to show them Vanessa's hastily deleted posts about her homeless family, juxtaposed with the subsequent wave of community responses praising my donation to the foster youth program. Public shaming doesn't work, I said, returning the phone to my pocket, when people know the truth. Dad straightened his shoulders, a subtle but significant shift in his posture, moving from bluster to negotiation mode. Let's discuss options, then, Gabrielle. Perhaps we can reach a compromise. I noted the change, the subtle but distinct shift from demands to discussion. Progress, however small, was still progress. The renovation continues as planned, I replied, gesturing toward a worker carefully removing old, faded family photos from a wall scheduled for demolition tomorrow. But I'm willing to help Vanessa find alternative housing within her budget. I have some contacts. Mom's tone, surprisingly, shifted from entitled to cautiously respectful. That would be appreciated, Gabrielle. Truly. My phone buzzed with a flurry of notifications, the security company confirming no further unauthorized attempts since last week, the auction house sending the official donation receipt for tax purposes, my contractor sharing progress photos of the back deck's breathtaking transformation. As we stood amidst the beautiful, stripped-back skeleton of my home, I noticed Dad studying the blueprints with a reluctant admiration. He recognized good planning, good execution, when he saw it, despite himself. Have you ever had to reinvent a space to reclaim it? I asked them both, my voice softer now, more reflective. Sometimes you need to strip everything back to its core to build something truly authentic. Before they could answer, my phone rang again. Mark's name appeared on the screen. Excuse me, I said, stepping away to take the call. I need to take this. I heard Mark's voice, quieter, more subdued than usual, a genuine contrition in his tone. Gabrielle, I wanted to apologize for my role in all this. I should have spoken up. Outside the window, I saw my parents walking slowly back to their car, their postures less rigid, less burdened than when they had arrived. Sometimes the hardest foundations to pour, Mark, I told him, my gaze sweeping across the raw, honest framework of my house, are the ones that support our boundaries. But they're also, undeniably, the most important. Behind me, the workers continued their focused, rhythmic labor, transforming my sanctuary, one nail, one beam, one unyielding boundary at a time. 3 months later, the formal dining room glowed with a warm, amber evening light, casting long, dramatic shadows across my parents' treasured Persian rug. The table setting, with its familiar arrangement, felt like a scene from a recurring dream, a vivid sense of déjà vu, the same rich burgundy linen napkins, the same crystal glasses catching the light in prismatic bursts, and the same palpable tension hanging in the air like an impending storm front. 3 months deep into my Lakehouse renovation, I had accepted this dinner invitation, not out of obligation, but out of a quiet confidence, knowing exactly what awaited me. "Your mother made her special pot roast tonight, Gabrielle," Dad said, carving the meat with his practiced, precise movements. His voice carried the forced casualness of a man about to embark on a difficult, delicate business negotiation. "Just like you always liked it." "It smells wonderful, Mom," I replied, smoothing my napkin across my lap, my gaze subtly noting the extra place settings, a telltale sign of expected reinforcements. "Are we expecting company?" Mom and Dad exchanged a quick, familiar glance, a silent communication I recognized all too well, one that had preceded countless childhood disappointments, countless carefully orchestrated family interventions. "We thought it would be nice to have a proper family dinner, dear," Mom said, her voice lilting, as she placed a generous serving of pot roast onto my plate. "It's been so difficult with everyone scattered, you know." As if on cue, the doorbell chimed. Dad's shoulders relaxed ever so slightly, a fleeting sign of relief. Reinforcements had, indeed, arrived. "I'll get it," Mom said, patting Dad's arm reassuringly as she passed. The moment she left the room, Dad leaned forward, his voice dropping to a confidential, persuasive murmur. "Gabrielle, I've been talking with the Hendersons. You remember John, my golf partner? He thinks what you're doing is rather harsh, rather uncharitable." I took a slow, deliberate sip of water, allowing the silence to stretch, to amplify the implied criticism. "I wasn't aware the Hendersons were stakeholders in my property, Dad," I replied, my voice cool and even. "Community matters, Gabrielle. People talk." "Yes, they certainly do, Dad." I set my glass down carefully, the subtle click echoing in the brief silence. "They talked when I handled the flood damage alone 3 years ago. Not a single offer of help then." "Then guess." Dad's practiced reply was abruptly interrupted by voices from the foyer. Mom returned, beaming, accompanied by Pastor Williams, our family's longtime spiritual advisor and, not coincidentally, someone whose opinion I had always deeply respected. "Gabrielle, my dear, so wonderful to see you." Pastor Williams took the seat Mom indicated, directly beside mine, his gaze warm and kindly. "Your mother tells me you've been quite busy with renovations." "Transformative ones, Pastor," I confirmed, a faint, wry smile touching my lips. I recognized the setup immediately. My parents had always excelled at creating the appearance of impartial juries, carefully selected to endorse their narrative. Mom served Pastor Williams before resuming her own seat, her expression one of hopeful anticipation. "We were just discussing family harmony, weren't we, Charles?" Dad nodded sagely, cutting his meat with surgical precision, now seemingly oblivious to his previous appetite. "And how certain decisions might still be adjusted, Gabrielle, for the greater good of all concerned." "The children miss their aunt so terribly," Mom added, her voice dropping to that particular, mournful register she reserved for maximum emotional leverage. "Family needs to stick together, especially in hard times, don't you agree, Pastor?" I noticed my fingers had tightened imperceptibly around my fork, the old pattern unfolding exactly as expected, the united front, the implied moral failing, the quiet, persistent suggestion that I, and my boundaries, were the problem that needed fixing. "Speaking of family," Dad continued smoothly, adopting the narrative seamlessly. "The Fosters, dear friends of ours, had to help their daughter's family last year. Opened their home for 8 months during their own renovation disaster. Barbara says it brought them all closer, actually. The pressure built in careful, insidious increments, each example, each implied comparison, a subtle, heavy reminder of what good families, what good daughters, supposedly did." I calmly reached for my handbag, retrieving my tablet. "I'd like to show you something," I said, my voice steady and clear as I unlocked the screen. "Since we're discussing renovations." The first photo appeared on the screen, my lake house, gleaming in the morning light, scaffolding embracing its exterior like a protective cage, a powerful symbol of planned, methodical change. I swiped to show the interior, gutted to the studs, workers visible in hard hats and protective gear. "This was day 1, I explained, my voice narrating the chronological journey, continuing to swipe through the dozens of photos. And this was last week. Pastor Williams leaned forward, genuinely interested, a thoughtful expression on his face. My goodness, Gabrielle, what a transformation. The latest photos revealed spaces utterly unrecognizable from their former state. The original 4-bedroom layout had been reconfigured into a modern, spacious 3-bedroom home with a private office overlooking the serene water. Floor-to-ceiling windows now framed the breathtaking lake view, bringing the outside in. Reclaimed oak beams crossed vaulted ceilings, matching the rich, custom hardwood floors below. That's the master suite, I explained, highlighting the room that had once featured so prominently in Vanessa's ill-fated plans. The cantilevered balcony was a significant structural challenge, but absolutely worth every penny for that sunrise view. Mom's fork paused, halfway to her mouth, her eyes fixed on the screen. It's completely different, she whispered, her voice tinged with surprise, perhaps even a hint of awe. That, Mom, was precisely the point. I swiped to a different folder, opening a detailed timeline document. Here's the project schedule, meticulously created 5 months ago, long before any emergency. And here's the property assessment showing the projected value increase, 40% above the previous valuation. Dad's expression shifted subtly, his businessman's eye, despite his personal grievances, recognizing a solid investment strategy, a masterclass in planning, despite himself. This was never about denying Vanessa, or being harsh, I said, my voice measured, resonating with a quiet authority as I placed the tablet gently on the table. It was about honoring my own plans. Plans I made long before her convenient housing crisis ever materialized. Come, I said, bringing up another folder, its contents designed to cut through their carefully constructed narrative. I also have some older photos you might remember. Or perhaps not, since you were all enjoying that Caribbean cruise at the time. The storm-damaged photos appeared, my lake house, now a painful memory, with water halfway up the first floor, furniture floating like spectral ghosts, walls already showing telltale signs of pervasive mold. $28,000 in emergency repairs, I continued, displaying receipts and contractor invoices, undeniable proof of my solitary burden. Here are the text messages from that week, the ones where I desperately asked for help, and was told everyone was simply too busy. I first thinks that I fat on. Mom's face paled, the color draining from her cheeks. Dad studied his plate with a sudden, intense interest, avoiding my gaze. Respecting boundaries isn't cruelty, I said into the thick silence, my voice unwavering. It's adulthood. Dad's shoulders sagged ever so slightly, a gesture so subtle, so uncharacteristic, I would have entirely missed it before. For the first time, I saw him not just as the imposing family patriarch, but as a seasoned negotiator who, in this moment, recognized that his position had been irrevocably outmaneuvered. I should have helped with those repairs, Gabrielle, Mom said quietly, her voice tinged with an unexpected remorse. No qualifications, no expectations attached. It was, perhaps, the first truly genuine apology I had ever heard from her. Just then, the front door opened, breaking the fragile, hard-won moment of truce. Vanessa swept in, her cheeks flushed with righteous indignation, clearly expecting to find the usual united front against me, the familiar battle lines drawn. Her stride faltered perceptibly when she observed the tableau, our parents' reflective, stunned silence, Pastor Williams' thoughtful, almost somber expression, and my tablet, still displaying cold, hard evidence rather than raw emotion. "What's happening?" she asked, confusion replacing her usual aggressive confidence, her voice an unexpected quaver. Mom said we were discussing the Lakehouse situation. We were, Vanessa, I confirmed, standing slowly and gathering my things, my tablet and purse. I've shared my renovation progress, and the details of my plans. When it's finally complete in 6 months, you're all welcome to visit as guests, with advanced notice, of course. I extended a formal, elegant invitation card from my purse, its engraved details a tangible symbol of my new terms. The housewarming is scheduled for March 12th. I sincerely hope you'll all attend." The unspoken question hung in the air as I walked toward the door. Who would come, and on what terms? I drove away from my parents' house with a surprising, profound calm, watching its familiar outline recede in the rear-view mirror. Ahead, twilight settled over the lake, and I pictured my property, now glowing with the focused intensity of construction lights, its transformation continuing, relentless and determined, regardless of who witnessed its completion. For the very first time in my adult life, I felt neither guilt nor obligation, only the quiet, unshakable certainty that peace didn't require surrender. Sometimes, it demanded a stand. 6 months had ripened into full completion since that fateful Sunday dinner ambush, and the morning sunlight, now a symbol of my reclaimed tranquility, danced across the lake, casting diamond-bright reflections on my bedroom ceiling. My lakehouse transformation was, at long last, truly complete. I cradled a mug of coffee between my palms, savoring the profound stillness on my balcony, a stillness I had fought for. No demanding voices clamored for my attention. No suffocating obligations crowded my thoughts. Just the gentle, rhythmic lapping of water against the dock and the cheerful, unburdened song of birds from the old oak tree, a venerable sentinel I had steadfastly refused to remove during construction, a symbol of resilient life. Below me, the professional-grade kitchen gleamed, a symphony of warm copper accents and rich, reclaimed wood countertops. Just last weekend, I had hosted friends for a lively dinner, serving wine in elegant glasses I had personally selected, not inherited, each choice an affirmation of my autonomy. Laughter, genuine and unrestrained, echoed through rooms once hypothetically designated for Vanessa's children. The spacious, sunlit exercise room now occupied what would have been her master suite, a daily, tangible reminder that self-care was not, and never had been, selfish. My phone chimed softly. A text from Rachel, my contractor, who had since become a cherished friend. "Still can't believe we pulled this off, Gabrielle. Best project ever." I smiled, remembering her initially stunned expression when I had first outlined my audacious vision. "You want to gut a perfectly good house?" she had asked, incredulous. Now, she proudly brought potential clients to see my place, showcasing her craftsmanship with a quiet understanding of its deeper meaning. Always with my permission. Always. The doorbell, a melodious chime, interrupted my reverie. Through the security camera, a quick glance confirmed it, my parents standing awkwardly on the porch. Dad shifted his weight between his feet, a familiar nervous habit. Mom clutched a small potted plant, a fragile peace offering. It was their first visit since the renovation had been completed, a significant, almost symbolic moment. I pressed the intercom. "Come in," I said, my voice calm and welcoming, unlocking the door remotely. "It's open." They entered tentatively, their demeanor strikingly different from that chaotic Sunday dinner where this all began. Dad's eyes widened, taking in the soaring ceilings, the expansive, light-filled spaces, a look of profound, almost bewildered admiration on his face. Mom's gaze fixed on the sleek dining table, positioned precisely where Vanessa had once confidently claimed space would be perfect for the kids' homework. "Gabrielle," this island Dad trailed off, at a rare loss for words, perhaps for the first time in his life. "Remarkable. Truly." Mom finished setting her jade plant, a vibrant splash of green, on a side table, her movements slow, deliberate. "Truly remarkable," she echoed, her voice softer, almost humbled. I served coffee in handcrafted mugs, watching them meticulously catalog each change, each detail. Mom lingered by the photo wall, images of my adventurous hiking trips, my impactful architectural projects, my serene sunset swims in the lake. Not a single family portrait among them. "This is who I've become," I said simply, answering the unspoken question in her eyes, a concise declaration of self. Dad nodded slowly, his businessman's eye acknowledging the sheer quality of the craftsmanship, the undeniable vision. "You've created something truly remarkable here," he admitted, echoing Mom's earlier words without realizing it. The bittersweet recognition hung between us, a profound growth that had, necessarily, required distance. Later that day, I hosted an impromptu gathering. Rachel, my contractor friend, brought a celebratory bottle of champagne. The security company, surprisingly, sent a generous gift basket with a card that simply read, "For our most respectful client." The owner of the auction house stopped by, proudly sharing photos of the community center, now beautifully furnished with Vanessa's abandoned heirlooms. The foster youth program director cried when we delivered everything, he told me, his voice touched with emotion. Said it was their first matching furniture set ever. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "I'm sorry about the furniture. Can we talk?" I considered her words, composing my response carefully, deliberately. "Dinner next month. Bring dessert. No discussion about moving in. No immediate forgiveness." The boundary remained, firm and unwavering, offering both protection and the quiet possibility of a different kind of future. After everyone had finally left, Dad paused at the door, his hand on the frame, his gaze sweeping across the transformed living space. "Respecting boundaries isn't cruelty, Gabrielle," he said thoughtfully, almost to himself, quoting my own words back to me. "It's adulthood." His acknowledgement, so long withheld, felt like the final, essential renovation completed. Evening settled as I walked alone to my dock, the air cool and fresh against my skin. The sunset transformed the sky from brilliant gold to deep, calming purple, colors rippling across the water's surface, reflecting a world now in perfect harmony. My reflection appeared in the water, solid, unwavering, against the changing canvas above. Peace, I finally understood, didn't mean giving up boundaries. It meant respecting them, fiercely and unequivocally. And in this sanctuary, meticulously completed by my own vision, on my own terms, I had, at long last, found it.